be the first. I've never swam anything like that before. I didn't have swim goggles. There was a shark chasing me. It had to be for a couple of miles. It was insane. It seemed, I don't know if it was friendly or what, but it was really close. But I'm here. We are here in Pittsfield at the Spartan Up podcast headquarters. Right?
Great headquarters,
yeah. We've got Sephra, who is our foraging expert. We've got Colonel Nye, and then we've got Dr. Johnny Waite, who can fix you no matter what your problem is. He's done it for me. This is an interesting podcast. It's a big one.
Huge.
Got invited down to go see Richard Branson on his island.
Never.
The only caveat was I had to swim to the island. The boat dropped me off. I think it was about 9 or 10 miles away. It was an awful swim.
It's a good swim.
I turn to my left at one point to catch some breath. I don't know, 2 or 3 miles in, and I see a fin. Talk about heart pounding, right? Turns out he's got some trained shark down there.
Yeah, it's like his bodyguard or something.
He's a shark lover.
It's a robot? Or
I don't know what it was.
It's a rare endangered species.
Joe became a robot.
I started swimming. I looked like an outboard motor. I got to the island anyway. Great interview.
Trained
shark. Guys are going to love it.
Did you just say dolphin?
I don't know what it was. All right. Well, Richard Branson here. We're on Spartan Up, the podcast. Thanks for inviting us down to your island. This island is unbelievable. I think it was a bit aggressive that you had me swim here, and the last 10 miles having that shark chase me definitely was...
gives you an incentive to get here.
It gave me an incentive. Was that a real shark? Or was that...
Yeah, it was a real shark, but it's a friendly shark.
So when you first came, what was it like?
There was just cacti on it. No beautiful flowers, one palm tree, but nature had been kind to it. It had the most beautiful reef all the way around it, pristine turquoise blue seas, rays, basking in the sun and in the water, giant tortoises. I mean, it was to die for. And once we managed to start making fresh water, then we could bring in the trees and the flowers and create a real Garden of Eden.
How difficult was it bringing everything over in those days? I mean, did you stay in a tent when you first came here?
We did actually stay on a tent on a boat. It took 5 or 6 years before we could afford to actually do anything here. So we would literally tent on the beach or get a beaten up old sailing boat to park off the island. And then as I was in the record business, and as Boy George had a hit, or Culture Club, or Human League, or Rolling Stones, or Peter Gabriel, or Phil Collins, we started building little bits of the island. It's been pretty special.
That's great. So it looks like you always go out of your comfort zone, right? Coming onto an island that was completely deserted, no fresh water, you didn't even have the money to buy it, and now you're sleeping on a tent on the beach trying to figure out how to get fresh water here. You do that often. You did it with the airline.
I was just somebody that experienced the bad experience of traveling on airlines. I was actually trying to get to the BVI, the British Virgin Islands, one day from Puerto Rico, and the same lovely lady was waiting for me, and I'd been away for 3 weeks, and American Airlines bumped the flight, and so I went to the back of the airport. I hired a plane. I hired a blackboard. I wrote Virgin Airlines one way, $29 to the BVI, went around all the people who'd been bumped, and I filled my first plane. And that got me thinking, that airlines do bump people. They don't care about you or me, particularly in the air. And so so I then rang up Boeing and said, do you have any second-hand 747s?
No kidding. I mean, it was literally that. You just sat in the airport and said, I'm starting an airline right now because I'm frustrated.
Exactly. And I think most of the best entrepreneurial ideas come out of frustration. I think if you're frustrated about something, the best way of sorting it out is get out and do it, and you've got yourself a business.
So out of your comfort zone, right, in a brand new industry, probably going up against British Airways, American Airlines at that time. How tough was that?
Very quickly, I realized that BA, were determined to put us out of business. They threw everything they could at us. They illegally accessed our computer information. They rang up our passengers pretending to be from Virgin when they were actually from BA, telling them that our flights were cancelled and switching them to BA. They went through my rubbish bins looking for incriminating evidence. They went to our nightclubs looking into our rubbish bins there to see if they could find any needles so they could spread stories about drugs in our clubs. I mean, it was extraordinary the lengths this so-called upper crust British company went to get rid of its competitor. And we took them to court, and we won the biggest damages in history, and we distributed it to all our staff at Christmas time, and it was known as the British Airways Christmas bonus, and it was a great fillip for the staff, and it shut British Airways up. They now compete with us fairly, toughly, but not in the underhand way they used to do.
So you're no stranger to difficulties and challenges, and you fight back. What motivates then the next giant challenge, which is space travel? You weren't bumped off a flight to the moon.
No, I wasn't bumped off a flight to the moon, but the governments that run space travel were not interested in you or me going to the moon. They've only, China, Russia, and America have only put 500 people into space since space travel began, and I want to go to the moon. I want to go to space, and I don't want to. And so I thought, let's embark on trying to build our own spaceship. And so, it's been a longer voyage than I thought it would be. I thought we'd be able to get it done quicker. But it's going to be all the more satisfying when we pull it off, hopefully later this year. And we've got 300 wonderful engineers beavering away in the Mojave Desert. They've created a beautiful spaceship, beautiful mothership, beautiful spaceport. We've got nearly 800 astronauts in waiting, and it'll be the most exciting thing I've done in my lifetime. And the rush of just the first journey. I mean, we're going to go from 0 to 3,500 miles an hour in 7.5 seconds. So it's going to be some trip.
Awesome. And you're the first. You're going to go up first.
Yeah, I plan to go up first. Hopefully with my children.
Do they know they're first?
Yeah. No, they fortunately they've taken more after myself than my wife. I'm quite an adventurous person, and they're also very adventurous. We've done wonderful adventures together. We climbed Mont Blanc last year. We kite surfed across the English Channel together. We ran the the marathon together. So we have some incredible adventures together. And I suspect, when we look back at things, it's those adventures that are actually more satisfying than anything else we've done in our lives together. I mean, and it's it's just great to be able to have those incredible experiences with your adult children.
So that's a big discussion within the Spartan community. Our 4 million Spartans will sometimes discuss how hard is too hard with children. We've got a lot of parents in the community, and I push my kids pretty hard because I want to get out and do things like you suggested, marathons. How hard is too hard? Your kids are now in their 20s?
They're in their 20s. I mean, let me tell you a story which, there was a 15-year-old Australian girl who decided that she wanted to sail around the world on her own. Her parents were absolutely being crucified by the Australian press for allowing this girl to do this. And I actually intervened and said, look, there aren't many people in their lifetime that can have this kind of opportunity. Let her do it. If she doesn't come back, she would have had the most incredible life, more incredible than almost anybody else on earth. And let her do it. And she ended up doing it. And of course, because she came back, her parents became heroes. I mean, they would have been zeros if she hadn't come back, but they were absolute heroes alongside her. The press completely forgot about the fact that they'd been crucifying them.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's awful when one of these things go wrong and somebody comes to grief. But I think those people who push themselves beyond their limits get much more out of life. Those people who say yes rather than watching other people do it, and it's worth it's worth the risk.
I hope you're not sitting still while you listen. If you are, you better get a burpee break in.
I'm a big believer, we're big believers in pushing the limits and being completely I was out of my comfort zone this morning. How far is too far?
Well, in business, 4 words are very important, and that's protecting the downside. And when you're embarking on a personal adventure, those 4 words are even more important. Protecting the downside is effectively protecting your life. So you'd be irresponsible if you embark on a grand adventure not to have thought through, what if, what if the balloon goes into the sea? What if, you end up in a mountain? What if? And so, if you're trying to do something for the first time, it is very likely that things are going to go wrong, because otherwise it would have been done before. But it's critical that you do everything you can to survive. And if in the end you don't survive, it's critical that you know that you did it. You gave it your absolute best shot to come back and tell the tale.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder sometimes people, I know any little success I've had compared to you, it's been minuscule,
by the way, that's rubbish, but carry on.
has been, because you can talk yourself out of doing something, right? If you protect the downside, you have to look at what if, but you could easily, if you do that too long, say, you know what, this is just not worth it. So there's that balance, right? Where,
yeah, and I mean, if you talk yourself out of it, fair enough. There was one occasion where I should have talked myself out of something. I mean, I arrived in Las Vegas, and I was, any time I launch a new company, there's a stunt prepared for me, and I was told I was going to jump off a building that was 100 stories high, which in itself is okay, but the wind was about 50 miles an hour, and I didn't have the guy I normally use as my stuntman with me, and as I was going up the lift to the top of this building, the Palms, I just felt incredibly uncomfortable, and I didn't know these people, and I just said to them, look, I'm really sorry, I need to go back to a room just to think about this. And they said, well, look, all the press are waiting on the top. I said, I just want to go back to the room to think about it. So I went back to the room and I paced up and down trying to think, what am I going to do? And somebody came in and said, look, the press just want to take a picture of you on the roof. And I knew straight away I was going to make the wrong decision. The moment I was on that roof, I knew I was going to jump. So anyway, I went up to the roof. There was quite a high wall all around the top of the roof, and somebody said, look, there's no wind. And I went, oh, well, I know why there's no wind, but okay, all right, I'll jump. So I jumped, and the wind slammed me into the building halfway down. And I arrived at the bottom. Unfortunately, it was my backside that hit the building. Thick pair of jeans like this, completely to tatters, my bum raw, blood everywhere, and I just felt like a rag doll. I felt so stupid. But so sometimes sometimes your better instincts you've got to listen to them, and if you keep questioning something and you feel the risks are unacceptably high, you've got to be man enough to say no.
Pull the plug. All right, well, let's go right into morning routine. What do you do in the morning? I saw you were sweating early this morning. Every time I see you, you're working out like a Spartan. People want a blueprint in our community on how to tackle their day.
Well, look. First of all, always felt that you've got to be fit. So, if you're fit, you can achieve anything. That wonderful feeling of the endorphins, screaming through your body. I mean, what better way of starting the day? So, I mean, my own personal way of getting fit is, I wake up, really early every day, and I play tennis with somebody who's a lot younger and a lot fitter than me, and we play singles, and we give it everything we can, and end up sweating big time, and having a lot of fun at this as well. And then if the wind is up, I'll go for a kite surf. Kiting's a lovely way just to get away from the mobile phones and just get out on the sea. And then after that come back, have a sort of nice healthy breakfast generally. So sometimes not so healthy.
You found your kryptonite.
And then I'm ready. Then I'm ready for the day. And I'm lucky. I've always worked from home. I work on this beautiful island. I've got my delightful, very very small team here, and we'll get work done. We always have interesting people on the island. I met you on the island a few months ago. So I mean, there's always interesting people to learn from. And then in the evening, back on the tennis court. I mean, I just love to, love doing finding fun ways of keeping fit. And then if I'm not on the island, quite often we'll set, every year we set ourselves a challenge. So, and by setting ourselves a challenge, and normally it's a family challenge, you then have to spend the 3 months, getting fit for that challenge. And so I think, having a challenge to aim for is always great.
That's our big push in Spartan. Is we ask people to sign up for 3 races a year, because I know that then starts a whole slew of dominoes into effect, right? That got to wake up, don't have that extra glass of wine, go to bed a little earlier, and without that, it is hard to stay motivated. No,
I mean, look, I did as I said, I ran the marathon a couple of years ago. I mean, I hadn't done any running for years. The first time I ran a mile. I thought, how am I ever going to get 26 miles? Then you build up to the 2 miles, 4 miles, whatever, and suddenly your fitness just comes back. It's just fantastic.
There's almost like a negative correlation where you see executives aren't that fit in general. I don't know if you see that. You might not see it on the island, but we see it, and I don't think they realize that. And I think you agree with me, a healthy mind comes from living inside a healthy body.
I mean, you can skip cocktail parties. I mean, once you've done a few, they're not that much fun. I mean, but it's a hell of a lot of fun getting fit and getting healthy. And if you are fit and healthy, you're going to, perform in your life many years longer than you would otherwise. Secondly, whilst you're relatively young, you're going to perform a hell of a lot better. You're going to feel better. You're going to look better. You're just going to get. You're going to be that much more successful. And it's just worth finding an hour or two a day for yourself.
You've been extremely successful. You've got some rules in life. Obviously, you wake up early. You stay fit. Is taking the cookie now, or just that instant gratification? Maybe having that extra glass of wine at night. Maybe staying up late. Is that something we should avoid?
Well, look, I don't think you need to get boringly fit. I mean, I think it's important that you party a bit as well as keep fit, and so you need to get that balance in life. I mean, on Necker Island, every night's a party. So I've learned the trick about how to disappear off to the loo and then not come back again. So I think everything's a balance, and so I think play hard, party hard, work hard. I mean, you can do them all.
if you had to pick one secret to success, one thing that the Spartan community could do to help them in their job, help them in their business, help them with their life, what would it? Is it being fit? Is it stepping out of your comfort zone? What do you think it would be?
I think looking for the best in other people. I think I find throughout my life, by never thinking ill of other people, by looking for the best, by praising other people, by even people who have been written off by most people. There's always something special you can find in other people, and life's short, and the world is much smaller than one realizes, and you're going to come across people time and time again in the most surprising places, and I've found that just by hopefully never falling out with anybody, life's that much more enjoyable and special. And as a leader, it's even more critical to be out there, motivating, praising, inspiring.
So avoid holding the grudge, and don't burn any bridges. And
yeah, I think if you do fall out with somebody in life, and even if you think it's their fault, just give them a ring. Go out to lunch with them. This could be your ex-partner, your ex-wife, and befriend them, and you'll just find. I mentioned early on in the interview, our battle with British Airways and the lengths they went to put us out of business. After we'd won the court case, I made a point of ringing the chairman of British Airways and inviting him out to lunch, and saying, let's shake hands, and in fact, let's go further than that. Let's set up a charity together. And in the last 10 years of his life, we became good friends. We did good things together, and that we put a bad moment behind us, and it was definitely the right thing to do. And I find that people who take that attitude, are that much happier for it.
That could be one of the rarest qualities out there, as not too many people could drop their ego and do that. So,
give you one example. I mean, I'm very fortunate to know Archbishop Tutu and Nelson Mandela, and they did this in a much bigger scale. I mean, they basically said, when they took control of South Africa, rather than doing what, say, America would do, which would be to execute our enemies, we will hold truth and reconciliation commissions, where people who'd committed atrocities against the black man will come, they will apologize, they will embrace, and they will be forgiven. And in that way, they managed to mend their country, and South Africa is now, a wonderful country of black and white people working together, playing together, marrying together, and the past has been put behind them.
Powerful, because even if no one watched this interview, which is not going to be the case, I've got a few things going on in my life that it's very hard for me to I'm pretty competitive. I'm sure you're competitive, and so that would probably be my biggest challenge. But listening to you, it obviously works.
Yeah.
If you can get past the past.
Yeah. Life's
short. You're right.
And people will be suspicious. I mean, if you ring up, somebody you've fallen out with, and they're initially, they're going to want to know, why it is that you want to see them for lunch, and what's the axe you've got to grind, and you just anyway. So, but you've just got to get through that and
get past it, and move on.
Past that and move on. Exactly.
Move on. What's your greatest failure, and what could we learn from that? Because we all have failures. You've had, luckily, more successes than failures.
Well, I mean, in our attempt to be, first of all, the first across the Atlantic in a hot air balloon, then the Pacific, and then trying to be the first around the world in a hot air balloon. I mean, we had many failures on the way. In fact, I think I got picked out of the sea 5 times by helicopters. So So but nobody had done it before, and so if you're going to attempt something that hasn't been done before, you're going to have to accept it's difficult, and there were some frighteningly sweaty moments, but we somehow managed to protect the downside and survive, at least get home. But we did get the record for the first Atlantic crossing, the first Pacific crossing. We came to within 1 day of being the first to go around the world in a balloon, and we just hit a blanket wall of air just off America, and the balloon just flying at 100 feet wouldn't go through this wall of air, flying at 35,000 feet it wouldn't go through this wall, and we ended up crashing in the sea just off Hawaii on Christmas Day, and fortunately being rescued by a helicopter, and it didn't matter. I mean, it's somebody else a few months later managed to go the whole way around the world. The satisfaction we got was from trying these things, from these incredible adventures. I mean, we'd flown over the Atlas Mountains, we'd flown over Mount Everest, K2, in the journey. A completely ridiculous journey of a lifetime. And I remember actually saying the day before, we thought we were going to get the record. Somehow, actually I didn't say it. I was going to sleep. I remember thinking it. If we succeed, it's almost too good. It
was so awesome.
It didn't matter. It was almost like I almost felt like we would have been spoiled to have succeeded because life's been so bloody good anyway. So somehow it was the right justice that we ended up in the sea and somebody completely unknown then beat us to it.
I read somewhere, I don't know if it was your mom did it with you or you did it with your children, where you dropped them off a couple of miles from the house and they had to make their way. Was that you? No,
it was my mum.
Your mom did it to you. And so how far should we push as parents with stuff like that, like dropping them off, having them find their own way?
Well, my mum would have been arrested today if she'd done that. But she was a great believer in, she wouldn't let us watch television. We had to be out there doing things. If she felt it was reasonably safe and we were two miles from somewhere, she would push us out of the car and tell us to, make our own way there. And if we got lost, she'd make sure that she had a backup plan. So. And life was that much more fun. She'd put us on a bike and tell us to ride 100 miles, somewhere.
It made you the way you are. You think that made the fabric, the DNA, into who you are?
I think it definitely helped. Yes, there's always a risk when parents do that with their kids, but. The alternative of wrapping them up in cotton wool, not letting them get out and play, is very sad.
And so we would argue in the Spartan community that that's what's happening, right? People are bubble wrapped. You weren't. Obviously, your mom had you biking 100 miles. Is there a demise in the future here for us? We've got 30% obesity rates coming. Where do you think this is headed? It's just.
Well, there could be a horrible demise for millions and millions of people if they don't look after themselves, and that's very sad for that individual. And it's pretty irresponsible as well, because we know what happens if you let yourself go. I mean, something like 1 in 3 people in the Caribbean have got diabetes too, and actually in the Caribbean it's difficult to get healthy food, and so you can sort of understand it. But somewhere like America, where you do have choice, it's irresponsible to let yourself go or let your children go in that way.
Yeah,
sad. It's difficult when you go out, but most of the time people spend eating at home, and there you can plan what you eat and what your children eat, and just do everything you can to avoid sugar. I mean, sugar is just the lethal thing.
I just read somewhere on sugar. I read 100 plus years ago we would eat 2 pounds of sugar per year. We now eat on average a half a pound per day.
No, I mean, I mean, now we know the real dangers of sugar.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew the dangers of cigarettes, and I think, by and large, people, do not want to commit suicide, and they've given up smoking cigarettes. We now know that the dangers of sugar are just about as bad, and by and large, people have not given up eating sugar, and whereas they should give up eating sugar, and they've just got to do everything they can. I mean, within about 4 days of giving up sugar in your tea or your coffee, you'll find that tea or coffee tastes better. So, you can wean yourself off without any downside,
effect
whatsoever.
Well,
and there goes the lecture.
thank you. And can we not put the shark back in the water when I swim out of here?
I will think about that.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Look, I spent all my life trying to protect sharks, so don't make sharks sound so bad.
I've been afraid of sharks for a long time.
All right, Necker Island. That was a great interview, Joe.
Just great.
Phenomenal.
I'm thinking
Best
pretty
one
awesome.
I've seen yet. Yeah. Branson's a true inspiration. He's kind of one of those thought leaders of our generation, I think, that just pushes the envelope and has done phenomenal things and acknowledges failure. And, I think, what did he say? He said the best entrepreneurial ideas come out of frustration. And I think that's a really interesting concept.
Too bad you're never frustrated with Spartan
Yeah,
Race.
exactly.
I'm never frustrated. I've got it really easy. Things just happen on their own. All that's cool, but his island is unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable.
And he's done a huge conservation. He has done a huge conservation effort down there. And the interesting thing about that island is when he first bought it, it was pretty much barren, and he has planted an unbelievable. I mean, you saw it; it's pretty lush down there, isn't it?
It's funny. We talked a little bit earlier, Tim, about sometimes that when somebody has a huge level of success, financial success, right, sometimes we discount the other things they do because it's like, well, yeah, anyone would work hard for that. He's kind of an interesting exception where, there are guys who they make a pile of money on Wall Street, they go build a great big house, and that's kind of all it's about, making money and building that house, right?
But he's willing to risk it.
Oh, well, A, willing to risk it, and B, just the contribution he's trying to make to the world, right, whether it's through the space travel, like really pushing a brand new frontier, taking huge risks there. Obviously, there's some recent news about that we may touch on. But a guy who's impacted our society in so many positive ways, I feel.
What else are you going to do on this planet? I wrestle with this all the time because I say it would be a shame to have this gift, life, because not everybody has arms, legs, all the gifts that we have, and not do that, not push the envelope, right? Not help society.
Yeah, well, the person who complains about their day and says, there just aren't enough hours in the day, and they have a job and a couple of kids to feed, and there aren't enough hours in the day. Here's a guy with 200 companies, is doing incredible things. Is the exact same number of hours in the day that I have. We've talked earlier about being bored. We've talked earlier about making sure that you don't leave anything undone. Anytime that we really need to look where the bar is, you look at someone like that and say, maybe I could be doing a little bit more if I'd get off my assets.
That's trust in his subordinates, all right? I mean, he's had
huge.
to build those companies, and then he's had to build the trust, the culture of trust, and he has to know that every one of those subordinate entrepreneurs, if you will, understand, again, what his standards are and what he's trying to achieve, and then they've all got to buy into it, and he's just got to kind of sit back and manage all of them. I shouldn't say sit back, he's got to actively manage all of them. But you're right, what a monumental task.
When he talks about finding the best in people, right, and that's, as you're building this company, that has to be a challenge too, because you're always wanting to ride people and get the most out of them, but you have to find the right people in the first place and see the best in them. So how would you relate that to your experience?
I it's going to sound a little bit like a cop-out, but I think about Branson. I actually had this conversation with him offline. We didn't videotape it, where I said, Spartan is growing like a weed. It's extremely hard to not be involved 24/7, take 600 emails a day. And he said, you've got to delegate more. And the next day when I saw him, he was struggling. He was talking to his daily planners about how many flights he had to take. So I think it's easier to say, hey, you just got to delegate, but in reality, it's a lot of work, no matter how you slice it.
Absolutely.
I think he's got such a reputation that it's slightly easier for people to row the boat in the same direction, right? Because everybody knows who he is. I think in the early days when we look at Spartan, when we formed it, it was hard to get people to get on the boat. They didn't know if the boat was going to float or sink, right? And B, are they going to row, and what are they rowing for? And as each month goes by and we survive and we get a little bit better and they see the emails come in and the lives are changing, the people that work for us are amazing because they are just doing their job. And so now any struggles we have, and we have struggles every day like anybody else, are really stuff we have to deal with as management.
Yeah.
And kind of navigate the storms, because we're in a daily storm here.
Well, but in that daily storm, and this is something I think he's a really great inspiration for, he looks like he's having fun, just generally. And I know that, there's a lot of work that goes behind that, but really enjoying life. And I think that's super important. And you've been on Wall Street, and you've been around other executives, and they're the guys who get out of shape, they get grumpy. Yeah, sure, they're making a ton of money, but they're not having fun.
No.
And he talked about staying fit and healthy, but also the idea about understanding that there are going to be problems, and that I love there's a quote that says, having problems isn't a problem. The problem is thinking that having problems is a problem.
I like that.
It just get that there are going to be problems,
can't
right?
get it on a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
And I think it also goes back to the fact that he loves his family, and they set goals together as a family. And I have some friends who work down on his island, and they said that they really are just a phenomenal group of people. And it's amazing. They say that they set goals, take risks. His support of that young girl who sailed around the world, right? I mean that's super cool. That to be when he hot air ballooned around the world, right?
I love that story.
I mean, you're willing to take risks, and even if you don't get to your finish line, right? He's still.
I love that he hit.
that.
I don't. You guys just watched the video, but when he hit the wall, right? When him and Stephen Foster were gonna set the record, and they hit the wall, and he thought to himself, you know what? It's been too perfect. We flew over the Himalayas. Everything has been fantastic. It would be unfair if we set this record. And so they were okay with falling short.
Yeah. Well, and obviously
we just keep cutting.
Sorry,
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. Go.
Well, all I was going to say is that there's some big news recently with this space program, with a tragic disaster, and yet here's a guy who he's put his own life on the line again and again to push us forward. And what's your take on that? Having met him and then having seen that, must have been kind of.
Well, when I saw the news, I immediately thought to myself, he'll be okay, because having sat down with him and having talked through it, he's just got the right head on his shoulders, and he understands this, and he knew that there was going to be danger. When you push anything, right, there will be danger. And I'm sure they took 100, 200, 500 test flights, so it wasn't that they were cutting
negligent.
Yeah, not negligent. They weren't cutting corners. And the hard thing to do, though, is to get back on the horse. And but I'm sure they're already planning the next mission.
Well, that's what makes him that. Well, one, he's a world-class explorer, but he's a world-class leader.
Right.
So people, and you talked about that he looks like he's having fun. That's part of his leadership.
Sure.
And so people are attracted to that, right? Yep. And world-class people are attracted to that. So he gets to pick and choose some pretty good staff to have around him, because people are attracted to winners, essentially. You want to be on that winning team, right?
Sure.
So, he has pushed the envelope out there, but he's done it personally. He put his own company and his money on the line, but he's also put his own life on there. And when you see somebody willing to risk it all themselves, it's so much easier to get behind that guy.
Sure. Leaders eat last.
Right.
And I want to ask Joe, because we talk about putting yourself around people who are already further down the road than you want to be. We talked about that with squash before. You play against people who are better than you. So here's a guy who, not many people have reached his level of business success. And you're at a level of business success with Spartan Race beyond what most people ever get to. So you found a guy who's playing a bigger game. What's the biggest thing that you took away from that meeting? You came back, obviously you went down to learn something and came back a better person for it. What would you say is the most immediately applicable thing that you learned?
I would say the biggest thing for me is he says, don't burn bridges.
Yeah.
Right? Build bridges. And even people that you're not getting along with, you're having disputes with, try to solve those problems. Now, after I left the interview, I found out that the dispute he was having with British Airways resulted in Virgin and Richard being awarded $500 million. Yeah. Certainly, it's easier to build a bridge with $500 million than it is without $500 million. So, but that doesn't mean we can't do that. And I've always been a big believer in the past is the past. Let's just move forward. Yeah. Met that Olympic wrestler who said to me, "Look, you're running downfield. You're trying to score goals. If there's stuff in the way, just detach yourself from it and just keep moving forward. It's easy to get stuck and dwell on fights and this and that, but it's just a waste of time."
To hear more great stories, go to SpartanUpPodcast.com. You're going to see some notes from this interview, our takeaways, a chance in the interactive corner to let us know what you learned from it. And, of course, you're going to find all kinds of other great videos there, too. We're doing, how many podcasts, Joe?
we're going to do 500 podcasts before we take a break. So we're going to pretty much work nonstop. We're not going to sleep. We'll just drink coffee.
We're not going to change.
We're not going to change. You're going to see us like
we're
this.
gonna stay right here.
500 podcasts until we're done.
Life is an endurance sport. Come join us at SpartanUpPodcast.com.